Welcome back to As It Turned Out, hosted by your favorite CU sophomore, Pananakazi Maruna. This is the podcast about the messy, beautiful process of figuring it out as we go. We're not here for perfect paths. We're here for the moments of doubt, the big pivots, and the quiet wins that don't make it onto our LinkedIns. We're talking about what it actually looks like to grow, adapt, and make your own way, one unexpected move at a time. Let's get into it. Today I'm sitting down with Oliver Leonetti, a healer, acupuncturist, and co-founder of Innergate, where he's built a career helping people find real alignment and well-being. From the path he imagined after high school to the pivots, left turns, and breakthroughs that shaped his clinic. Let's dive into his journey. So if we went back to when you were first starting out and leaving high school, what did you imagine your career would look like, and how close or far did it turn out to be from that picture?
Boy, leaving high school. Um, I honestly don't think I had a very clear vision of what I was going to do when I left high school. Um, I knew I was headed to college and I was interested in biology because I had great bio teachers in high school. And I was going across the country, so I was going to be in a whole new state and a whole new environment. And I was really excited about that. Growing up in Ohio, there weren't a lot of green spaces. There wasn't a lot of access to nature. So one of the things that really interested me about Oregon was all this nature and outdoor activity and stuff. But in terms of a career, I don't think I really had that vision quite yet at that point.
Yeah, that makes sense. I don't think a lot of people do right out of high school.
Yeah. I think that developed much, honestly, not even until a year or two after college did that really start to form and coalesce for me.
So did you study biology in college?
I did. I was a bio major and I was a Latin American studies minor. And I did an overseas program in Ecuador and learned to speak Spanish. By the end of my 4 years of college, I was really pretty toasted on biology. I didn't love writing the papers. I didn't love the research. Um,
Yeah, it's
it was the path I chose early and I stuck with it and I finished it and I got the degree. But I really truly enjoyed the Latin American studies more. I loved writing the papers and thinking about all the sort of complex history and identity around that. So by the time I graduated college, I didn't want to head down the intern route and get into the bio research world. I was pretty I was pretty done with it.
yeah. So what kind of made you transition into healing? Was biology what kind of influenced that?
It's funny because I would say that I didn't really get interested in that until maybe a year after college. But then I was looking back at some journals and some things I'd written when I was younger, and it was a theme throughout. And I run into old high school friends, and they remind me that I was always concocting herbal remedies for people's colds and coughs. And um, so I guess that thread was always there. I just didn't develop it or step into it until, a year after college. The year I spent, or 2 years after college, I went and worked on a farm with a friend who was trying to build this organic farm project. And I thought it was going to be the coolest thing in the world. And it was great. And it was awesome, tons of fun. But we were very broke. Um, and after 2 years of working my butt off and building this project on somebody else's land, and I knew that I needed to find something else. And so that's when I kind of looked back at the things I had done, and my exposure to acupuncture as a college student was pretty foremost. And my sort of anti-establishment mentality at the time, I didn't want to go into sort of anything Western med and pharmaceuticals. And, I had a very good guy, bad guy mentality. And so Chinese medicine just seemed like the right approach to me.
Yeah. And being somebody who doesn't always love big establishments like that, was it kind of hard to turn that passion into a profession, or did that feel like an easy transition for you?
That felt very organic. And maybe I had just gotten a little bit older and a little bit wiser or a little bit more worldly by the time that came to fruition, because I moved back to Portland
Yeah.
and went back to school. So I did a master's degree program in 3 years. And in 3 years of studying and picking up debt and running a job on the side and working with the Western medical establishment, I did an internship in one of the primary care facilities in town and worked with doctors. I think my mentality towards, everybody's approach is different and valuable had changed quite a bit. And then in terms of building a business, we got out of school. I got married and traveled for a little bit. And then one of my close buddies and I kind of settled in Portland right at the same time again and just threw up our shingle and started to get to work.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I know every career has like a lot of turns and paths, and you've definitely done a lot of like cool side like journeys. What's one of those that really stands out that like taught you about your profession, even though it's maybe wasn't related?
Oh my gosh. Well, um, I'd say my honeymoon travel. So my honeymoon, I was very fortunate, and my honeymoon was a 7-month honeymoon.
Wow.
So my wife and I left the country, and I had my Chinese medicine degree, and I practiced for a year in their intern clinic. So I had some, novice developing chops. I had plenty of confidence, which was great. And we started our travels in Latin America, and where I could speak the language. So through those couple months, I was actually able to practice in multiple different places. I got set up with a little practice in Belize on an island because I met somebody who was like, "What? You do acupuncture? Cool. You should treat my friends." And so I was trading for kayak trips and snorkel trips. And yeah, it was a really cool experience. And then we stayed in another town for a month, and I met some people, and they wanted me to come practice in their clinic. And so that was really cool. The funny thing is, we went to Asia and traveled through China and Mongolia. And the only country I did not practice Chinese medicine and acupuncture in was China.
Really?
Well, I didn't have the language, and they had so much access to the medicine that there was, it didn't really fit. But I did in Mongolia. We did a volunteer project and stayed there for a month. So the scientists on site and even the janitorial staff and the people that were working there all got excited about having an acupuncturist. And so we had a little yurt and we did a little fire at night. And they'd come in and they'd trade me all kinds of fun stuff like paintings of the wild horses and yeah, but it was just kind of cool and very insightful of how accessible the medicine can be and how helpful it is for people, um, even in these kind of random settings.
That's really cool though. It's cool you got to travel and also do something that you were interested in.
Yeah, yeah, very, very fortunate.
So I know running a company involves like wearing a lot of hats. What's some of the roles and responsibilities you have to like take on while working at Intergate and running that?
Um, well, in the early days, Eric and I did everything, and we lucked out about, I don't know, 2 or 3 years into the business, maybe about 3 years in. It was growing substantially. We'd hired a few people and had really created a mess for ourselves. We lucked out again, super lucky. One of our patients at the time was a business coach, and inventing our problems with her, she ended up, presenting us with um, I don't know, a program. It said, do you want to hire me? Do you want to use me? Here's what I can offer you. And we did, and we ended up using her for several years. And she really helped us structure the business in new ways and set up metrics and manage the budget more intelligently. She was really fabulous for us, and she's retired, and she's actually coming over on Wednesday from out of town for lunch just to check in and
That's
see how
fun.
her young fellows are doing. But as we evolved and developed the business, the hats have switched, and right now we have a management team that's 5 people. So we have somebody that does HR, we have somebody that does all the billing, we have somebody that does all the staff management. Um, my main business partner is the CFO. He does all the financial and the bookkeeping, and right now I do all the marketing.
Yeah.
and I'm still seeing, and he's still seeing a full load of patients every week. So it's still a lot,
Yeah.
uh, but it's at least kind of cordoned off into a more manageable setup.
Yeah. Well, I know Intergate has like grown and evolved a lot. So I imagine your definition of success has too. How would you say like your definition of success is different now than when you were first starting out?
That's a great question. I think when we were first starting out, we wanted to keep our heads above water.
Yeah.
We wanted to be able to provide healthcare for people. We wanted to be able to bring home enough money to put our kids in good schools and educate them. So I think, a lot of our goals initially were financial. I think now, obviously we still have those financial solvency goals and making sure that there's enough to go around. But I think the goal has switched to really making sure there's enough for all the employees.
Mhm.
We want to have a stable place where people want to stay, and can make enough. And that's really kind of hard and tricky in an environment where we've seen compensation go down through the years. My
Yeah.
business is based a lot on insurance reimbursements. So as those have gone down through the years and our expenses have gone up, it's really made it more of a tightrope, to make sure that we can keep everybody kind of getting their living wages and enough to put away on the side and retire. Um, so that's one of the really big goals, is sort of stability and solvency for everybody.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. What do you kind of see next for Intergate? Where are you trying to take it next?
Um, we'd like to move one of our clinics. So we have two clinics. We'd like to move one of them to a more stable location. The one we're in now is a rented space, and the city has cut off the roads on both sides of us and made access really difficult. And there's a construction project that's going to start across the street. And so our big vision right now is, how do we get out of that space? And that's a lot of thinking about, where do we end up? Do we end up far away? Do we just move the whole clinic? Do we just move it, a half mile? The two clinics are pretty close. They're only a few miles apart, so we could definitely move farther from the other one and still get people to the other one. Um, so that's kind of the biggest thing, is to get those two spaces differentiated.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. And then, the clinician wise, we're doing great. We've got really great clinicians. I mean, we're really fortunate. We've got really experienced chiropractors, really experienced naturopaths. So we want to keep them on and grow their programs a little bit in the space that we have. But we don't have that much empty space. So unless we really go crazy and decide that we want to open a third clinic, which would really be surprising to me with how much energy it takes to open a second clinic. Um, I think we really just want to fill up the two we have and make sure we're stable and solvent going forward.
Yeah. What kind of advice would you have for college students like me who are interested in starting a company or starting something they're passionate about?
Um, I think having your vision clear, understanding what you want to create, what your product is, what your service is, what makes it unique, how it fits into the landscape, what makes it different. I think that clear vision kind of forms the foundation, and it will evolve, and there's an organic sort of change and flow, and you see which parts sell better than other parts. And I thought I'd be a Chinese herbalist and I was going to make all these concoctions and have walls of herbs, but Americans don't really like that. They don't take that. There's a few that like it. I ended up being way more of an acupuncturist.
Yeah.
Service is way more in demand than a bunch of stinky herbs that might be amazing, but takes
Those
a
are
lot
fun.
to um, but the other thing that's interesting in watching the world evolve is the tools that are out there, is knowing how to use the tools. And as somebody who's getting close to 50, watching the AI roll in and knowing that if I don't step up to that plate in some capacity, I'm going to get left behind.
Yeah.
And I can remember in 2005 when I started my business, a great friend of mine said, "You should have a website." And I said, "I don't need a website." And he was like, "Dude, you need a website." And I was like, "I don't think people are going to look for things on the internet, man." And he's like, "Why don't you just give me some pictures of your trip to China? Tell me a little bit about what you do, and I'm going to build you a website." So my first website was built in concrete by a great friend of mine. And another guy I met in China randomly. I ran into him on the street in Portland, and he asked me to treat his asthma in trade for SEO work. And
Oh,
so in 2005, I had a SEO'd website, and our business took off.
yeah.
And so, as a Luddite who was like, "I don't need a website," it's a great thing that my friend was like, "You do, and I'm building you one." So, for young people thinking about their business, knowing what those tools are, knowing how to embrace them, is going to be really important.
Yeah, I definitely agree. We have a lot of like classes on AI and stuff, and it's
I bet.
taking over right now, which is exciting.
Yeah. And it's going to change. It's going to be a different thing in 5 years than it is today.
Mm-hmm.
We'll look back at what it did today and be like, that was ridiculously slow and silly. And, I remember even just like 6 months ago, all the pictures you'd generate would have 6 fingers and the teeth were all weird. And that's gone already.
You can't tell it apart.
Yeah. Yeah. My daughter was making fun of me for getting emotional about some video on Instagram. And she was like, "Dude, that's just AI." And then I felt like an idiot.
It's so real. Okay, well, kind of to wrap this up, looking back on all the pivots, passions, and surprises, what's something you've learned about how things actually turn out?
Um, Things don't turn out the way you expect. And I think one of the big keys is adaptability
Mm-hmm.
and just kind of having your vision, knowing what your values are. I want to bring a great service to people. I want to have great clinicians that I can trust to refer to any single one of them. Knowing that your values are solid, and knowing that the other things are not, and
Mm-hmm.
that you can adapt and you can evolve, and you just need to make sure that you're still in tune with what you're putting out there into the world. But the way that it shows up might not be what you expect today.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you so much for tuning in to As It Turned Out. If this episode inspired you or made you feel differently about your own path, share it with someone who'd love it too. And if you know anyone with a story worth telling, someone who took the long way, changed directions, or built a life they never expected, send them my way. Until next time, thanks for being here.